Welcome back to the Baseball Nation podcast. First interview of the podcast with Thomas Hackimer. Little background of Thomas: he pitched collegiate baseball at St. John's in New York, finished his college career with a 2.38 ERA, then got drafted by the Twins in the fourth round in 2016. Currently, he is a free agent in the minors. What's up, Thomas? How's it going?
How's it going?
So how has the TJ rehab process been going for you?
It has been long and pretty boring for the most part, which I think is, I think anyone you ask, it'll probably, I guess that's a good thing, actually. Like if it was there were a lot of things going on, that would probably actually be a bad thing. You know what I mean? Boring is the way that you kind of want rehab to be.
How do you make it through the mental side of injuries?
So it's definitely been, it was not as bad as I thought it would be for a long time because I just like accepted it was going to take a while and it was going to suck. And then as I'm getting to the end of it, and it's starting to hit me a little more. But it's starting to hit me a little more in the way that it's like it's been so long, and I think that you don't realize how much that takes out of you. Like I haven't competed in over a year, uh, but I knew this was coming and I prepared for it pretty well. So I think I'm in a good place to handle all of that as I get to like the end of my rehab.
So walk us through your story from high school ball to pro ball.
Okay, so in high school, I was a shortstop. I pitched 0 innings. Uh, I then went to college as a pretty much to try to walk onto a team as a sidearm reliever. After having never pitched and certainly never throwing sidearm, I made the team. Ended up being all right. I got a lot better over 4 years. Uh, Ended up getting drafted by the Twins in the fourth round in 2016 after I had actually said no to the Mets the previous year, who had drafted me in the 15th round. Ended up saying no, going back for my senior year and getting drafted by the Twins. Uh, and yeah, I played for them for 5.5 years. Had some real command issues coming out of the gate in 2021, and I got released. I got picked up by the Mets, ironically enough. I played out the rest of that year with them, and then the following year, going into spring training with them, I in spring training found out that my UCL was completely torn off the bone and probably had been for some time, which probably explains my command issues, or at least part of it. And so I spent the rest of last year rehabbing. My contract with them was up, and I was a free agent while also being hurt, which is a very bad combination. And that brings us to where we are now, I think.
What was your velo progression like from the beginning of college up into pro ball?
So my freshman year of college, I was like anywhere from like 78 to 82. I really had no idea what I was doing. I could not throw any off speed pitches. I had like sort of a slider, maybe. Following year, sophomore year, I got up to maybe like 83 to 85, would touch like 86. I had gotten in the weight room a lot more. I was a lot stronger. I had been pitching for longer. Obviously, I hadn't pitched since like little league, basically. So I really didn't know what I was doing. Junior year, or between my sophomore and junior year, is when I tore my ACL. So I didn't pitch for a good 3 months there in like in the fall of my junior year, and I came out in season my junior year, and my first like four pitches were all like 90, 91, and it's just way harder than I'd ever thrown. I'd gotten again a lot stronger rehabbing from my knee surgery. I'd gotten my left leg a lot stronger because I tore my right ACL. Left Your lead leg is really important in velocity, like the amount of force you produce in pitching. And I came out and I was, for most of that year, I was 88 to 91, kind of out of nowhere. And then my senior year, I kind of went all in on trying to be as good as I could be. Ended up doing the like free Driveline weighted ball program over that winter. And I think that year I topped out at 93 or 94. And I was, for the most part, like 90 to 90, 89 to 92 uh, for that entire year. And I would run it up a little harder when I was like really amped. And then overall, I don't think I've thrown a ton harder since then, until like the last. That pro ball is weird just because the season's longer. You get a lot more tired throughout the year. You have a lot more fluctuations velocity wise. But I didn't have another like really significant jump until 2021. I started throwing suddenly way harder than I ever have. I was like averaging 91 to 93, touching 94 and almost 95 throughout the course of that whole year. I was just like, this is awesome. My and then the next year I find out that my elbow has been falling apart for a year plus. Uh, and right now I've gotten back up to like 91.3. So we're we're working our way back.
What was the recruiting process like for you, and why did you become a pitcher?
Mostly it's because I was told that's what I was going to do if I wanted to keep playing baseball. I was a shortstop. I like you throw from a lot of arm slots as an infielder, just sort of naturally, like making a bunch of different plays, turning double plays. You throw from lower slots. The head coach at St. John's, Ed Blankmeyer, saw me in a high school game just because St. John's is 10 minutes from my high school. And he saw me like throwing from different slots and more or less like offhand made a comment to somebody. It was just like, oh, that kid would probably be a good like sidearm pitcher. The pitching coach who he had happened to make that comment to knew my hitting coach at the time. He told me that, and that's more or less how I ended up going to St. John's to kind of walk on as a sidearm pitcher because they were just like this. I couldn't hit to save my life. So they were, but I had a good arm, and they were just like, "You're going to be a pitcher if you want to keep playing. You're probably going to throw weird if you want to play here." And I was just like, "Sure, sounds great. I'll give it a shot." Yeah, it turns out that Blanks was he made a pretty good call on that one. I did turn out to be an all right sidearm pitcher.
What is your hot take about D1, D2, and D3 baseball, and how you think those could stack up against each other in a three-game series?
There definitely are. Like the University of Tampa is like consistently one of the best D2 teams, right? And I'm sure that they would probably beat most of the worst D1 teams. And if you made them play like a 3 game series, there's definitely a pretty wide range of talent across each division. I played at a mid major D1, and you could see like the difference. Like we played some like I don't know if we ever played any SEC schools, but we played a ton of ACC schools. Saw some really good talent there, and we also played some really terrible teams. So like, and they were all Division One. So like, there's a definite gradient. And I've played with tons of guys in pro ball who came from D2 and D3 schools. So like, there's talent everywhere.
What's your biggest advice for constant progression?
Biggest advice for constant progression. That's an interesting one. It's like I would say one, like keeping track of what you're doing. If you don't know where you are, you can't go where you're trying to go, if that makes sense. If you don't know where you're starting from, there's no way you can create a plan to get where you're going if you're not like honestly evaluating that. And the other thing, if you are like looking for like one of my least favorite things that gets said a lot is like getting 1% better every day. It's a good thought, but like realistically, you're just not going to do that. Like you're going to have days where you just don't get any better, and that's also fine. Like things will just suck some days.
How was your time making videos for Trevor Bauer's media company, Momentum?
It was fun. Tyke Green is a good friend. I uh, got to know him while he worked at Driveline, and I was out there training. And when I think we started, it was during COVID. They started doing some of the minor league vlogs, and he asked me if I'd be interested in doing one. And I said, yeah, why not? It's something that I thought would be fun, and it definitely was. I was really glad that I did it. It helped me sort of get uh, some practice with stuff like that and get an idea of like how I would like to do it, which I think has helped me a lot going into the what I'm doing now, which is vlogging my TJ rehab. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate anyone watching for any reason.
What's your biggest advice to be mentally tough on the bump?
Uh, that is a good question. I would say that it's like the most important thing is being able to have like an incredibly short memory when you're out there. You can't let one pitch affect the next one. Either way, like if you throw a really bad pitch, like you can't let that affect the next one. And if you throw a really good pitch, you can't like ride that high because you might do something kind of dumb. Uh, and you might make a worse decision. It has to be a really you have to be really good at sort of clearing what just happened as you go into the next pitch. I think that's the most important thing.
What's it like playing with and being around some of the best players in the world?
It's kind of nuts. Like it's kind of insane. I was like rehabbing this past year. I was down at the Mets complex all year, and we had at different points we had Degrom and Max Scherzer down there, and just like walking into the training room and hearing Max Scherzer going on a rant about whatever it was he might have been talking about that day. It's like a very weird and surreal experience. At one point, Max Scherzer actually not yelled at me, but like got annoyed at me. And we were talking about like movies. And it's just this incredibly weird, surreal thing that I'm pretty sure happened to me, but like it's so insane to like ever tell that story that Max Scherzer yelled at me because I implied that Forrest Gump was a better movie than Top Gun. He is like he's exactly as intense doing everything as he is when you see him out on the mound. It's super cool.
Do players look at baseball more so as a job or just do they just try and have fun out there?
I mean, everyone definitely treats it like a job because it is, right? Like if, for all of us, it is our job. Those guys just get paid a lot more than I do. Uh, but like even in there, it's really interesting to see that there's a really wide range of approaches. Like Scherzer, super, super intense, really like it doesn't matter if he is going out to throw a bullpen or if he is going into the training room to do like corrective exercises. He is like an equal level of intense about all of it. DeGrom, on the other hand, is like super laid back about everything. Like he will do the stuff, but like going out to throw a bullpen, like he's super like laid back, like goofing around the whole time. But like Scherzer is like that super intense, like stare, like marching to everything he does. So it's really interesting to see that, and it's like both approaches work for both of them, right? And it wouldn't work if they tried the other one. So it's a big, you have to, one of the bigger things that I think I've noticed is that you have to do what works for you and you have to find out what that is.
Do you have any other cool stories about interacting with some of the game's greats?
I mean, those are the ones that are obviously the most recent, and I spent the most time around. And I think that are probably the most notable. Up until then, it was like Joe Mauer said good morning to me one time. That was nice. He was a really nice guy. Uh, but I think that's about it. The other ones I try to remember are like guys that I've faced. Uh, but I think the biggest ones were like a couple years ago in spring training. I faced like Manny Machado and Jonathan Scope. Those were fun. Uh, oh, I hit Chris Davis in the leg, and then he went on to have the worst season ever.
What was the result of the Machado at bat?
He flew out. So it was actually, so I was facing, we were facing the Orioles, and it was when they were all on the Orioles. I was facing Chris Davis. I had him 0-2. I tried to throw an inside fastball. I hit him in the thigh. And like either next or like right after, on deck or in the hole was Manny Machado. And it was like right after the year where he had gotten like almost gotten into a couple of fights because guys had hit him. And I had just hit a guy and I was just like, okay, whatever you do, don't hit Manny Machado. I threw him a slider and he flew out to right, I think.
What do you think the biggest difference is between high school ball, college ball, and pro ball?
Uh, I used to my dad used to tell me that like the game speeds up at every level. I didn't quite understand it. but it definitely speeds up at every level. Like there's just the guys are better at processing all of the things that you have to process in order to make good decisions. So like hitters are better at like recognizing pitches and having an approach. Fielders are better at like taking the right play when they have a choice, like making the right decisions. Pitchers are better at pitch selection and throwing the ball where they want to, or they just have better stuff and they throw harder. It's definitely like that is proven to be very true that like the game certainly speeds up on you as you go up in levels, and just like the overall quality of every player in the lineup goes up. Like at the like here's the example in high school. I played shortstop because I was a really good fielder. I could not hit to save my life. It didn't matter what you threw me. As I got into college, like there were guys who like could hit but were also just like defensive specialists, but also were basically what my pitching coach would call an out in a uniform. And every time you go up in level, there's just like fewer and fewer of those guys. Or like, oh, this guy just can't hit a slider at all. You just have to, it doesn't matter where you throw him a slider, he won't hit it. Like those guys you would see at like the lower levels of the minors, but not at the upper levels. It's just like the holes in the lineups and the holes in like the holes in a guy's swing or in anyone's game just get smaller and smaller and fewer and far further between.
How do you recover after appearances to keep feeling good throughout the whole year?
I mean, it's really difficult to like stay actually feeling good the whole year. It's a long, long season, but I think the most important thing is being able to like disconnect and relax as soon as possible after the game to get your body into like a state that it can actually recover in. Because when you're out there competing, you get into like a literal like fight or flight. Like your body is like you're very stressed, even if it's just because you are in like a high stress situation. The sooner and quicker you can turn that off, however that is, and the better you can do that, the better you're going to recover. And also, of course, sleeping is just like super important. Easily the most important thing you can do.
What are your thoughts on guys like Ethan Sauce, someone who's 16 being in the minor leagues?
That's wild and that rocks. He seems to be really good. So like whatever, like it's baseball. If you can do it, you can do it. No one really cares how old you are.
What are your thoughts on the new rules like bigger bases and the shift ban?
Bigger bases, I don't really care. That's fine. The shift ban, I think, is I think it's kind of dumb to limit how you can play defense. To be like, no, that strategy is too good. You can't do that anymore. As a concept, I don't really like that, but like it's working. Like there's more base hits, I guess, and if that's what the league wanted. So I'm kind of torn on that one. I think it's dumb, but it got the effect they wanted. I don't again I don't I'm not too strongly for or against that one.
What are your thoughts on pitch clock as a pitcher?
The pitch clock I'm fine with. I don't think guys should take 2 minutes in between pitches. I think there should be like 3 to 5 seconds added to it. So I feel like it's just a little too like it feels a little rushed. I haven't watched a ton of baseball this year, but it feels almost a little too quick. I know again that's the goal. I think that if they added a little bit of time to it, it would be like a perfect sweet spot. It would still speed games up, but the game would still feel a little bit more naturally paced. Yeah, I don't think it would be that dramatic of a difference. And I think that like I feel like most of the pitch clock violations I've seen have been really, really borderline. Right? Like the goal of the clock should be it should speed up the game, but you kind of don't ever want there to actually be a pitch clock violation. Like you don't want it to actually ever affect the game. So I think it should be they should sort of tinker with it until they get it to where like, okay, this is where everyone's comfortable. It's still speeding up the game, but there's like one violation a week.
What do you think about the idea of expansion and adding two more franchises to give more players a shot?
Yeah, I'm selfishly very in favor of that, but uh I think it's a good idea. I think that there's definitely markets where an MLB team would serve. I think Las Vegas is probably one of the bigger and more obvious ones. Although there's all the rumors about the Athletics going there. I think there's definitely room for two more big league teams to be put in there. I feel like we've had expansion in most of the other leagues to 32, or a couple of other major sports have 32 rather than 30 now. I think that it would be good for the game probably.
If you don't mind us asking, what MLB teams have been looking into you and giving you calls and interest?
There's a couple teams. I'm trying to not say it out loud because I feel like it's bad luck.
Are you about ready to be done with this TJ rehab process?
Yeah, I would just like to. Not that I would like to be done with it. I'm in 9 days. It is my 1 year anniversary from the surgery, and it's ridiculous to me. Honestly, it was. It feels like yesterday. I was still wearing the arm brace and like couldn't move. Uh, but yeah, it would be really. I'm really excited to get back out and start competing again.
What's your best advice for younger generation on how to achieve their goals?
I think it's most like this is going to be relatively generic advice, but it's you really have to be clear on what those goals are, and then not just focusing on the goal, but like how you get from where you are to that goal. Like what steps do you have to take? And like, again, being very honest with yourself about what you have to improve in order to get there. One of the biggest things I think in my career that I've realized is that like you can be as good as you want at certain things. You're going to have weaknesses. Most of the improvement that you, or most of the easiest improvement you're going to have is actually working on your weaknesses, but it's going to suck because they're things you're bad at and you have to admit that to yourself first. And like admitting you're bad at things is really hard to do sometimes.
Thank you for being our first guest from Pro Ball on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this interview with minor leaguer Thomas Hackimer, and please be sure to stay tuned because we have more interviews just like this coming down the pipes.